creative dignity for a while. We started in October this year. And the idea behind these talks is to explore climate resilient growth paths for the craft economy, spicing things up with lively dialogues and masterclasses. Today, we are kicking in our third round of the series. In October, the first discussion that we had was on the role of biodiversity in creating equitable development models. And we went on in November to understand the role of technology in facilitating accountable, transparent and traceable solutions in the decentralized ecosystem through a tech provider, which is Kosha. It helped us understand that there are many enterprises across India, like Looms of Ladakh, there's Tata Trust Antaran, Northeastern Handicraft and Handloom Department, who are benefiting from it. And all these takeaways are rounded under the blog section on the Creative Dignity website with coordinates of speakers, technology providers, in case you want to connect to them. That's the idea. An empowered supply chain can directly power storytelling as well. And according to Capgemini Research Institute, it's a global consulting leader, 60% of Indian consumers have reduced buying from companies that are perceived as non-sustainable. And 88% it states are willing to purchase a more sustainable product once they are made aware of the product's social and environment impact. While the social, cultural, and ecological sustainability is high in most creative manufacturing and handmade businesses, they somewhat lack structured tools and communication strategies to relay this positive impact to the consumers and buyers. So today we have invited Shruti Singh, who's the country head of Fashion Revolution India, to bring together a conversation that dives into what, why, and how of speaking the climate language and capturing positive impact, especially in the case of micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. Fashion Revolution India indeed recently did an industry report called Craft in the Age of Climate Crisis in collaboration with British Council, which built a case for the craft sector leading environmental stewardship for climate mitigation. Shruti was at the helm of this research and took the findings last week to COP28. Welcome, Shruti. And thank you for joining us. It'll also be great, Shruti, if you can weave in some of your takeaways in the moderation that you do today. She will be speaking with Apurv Kothari of No Nasties. No Nasties is a Goa-based clothing brand. It will not be incorrect to describe Apurv as an early adopter of the best practices there are. His was India's first fair trade apparel brand, also one of the first homegrown brands in the fashion retail space to invest in measuring carbon footprint and offsetting matrix. In short, he speaks the language of sustainability like it's his mother tongue. Welcome, Apurv. Which brings me to our next panelist, Pragati Tripathi, COO Flourish. She is the mastermind driving business development, operations strategy, and communication at Flourish. Flourish is one of a kind marketplace dedicated to handmade products, and it is all about transparency and ethics. This marketplace gives the lowdown of parameters that are majorly shrouded in opacity, like cost breakdown, wage component, even the carbon footprint that gets generated during transportation of a product from to the consumer. Welcome, Pragati. So buckle up for some real talk that explores communication not only as a channel, but as a catalyst for systemic change for industry and consumer empowerment. We will run this conversation for 50 minutes and followed by Q&A for next 15 minutes. So please keep the questions flowing as the session unfolds in the chat box. Over to you, Shruti.
Thank you, Shruti, for such a wonderful introduction to everybody. And we're going to talk about communication today and why communication is important and how you can leverage it for your businesses, for your personal brands, and identity in sustainability. Talking about the recent report that we did, I think it is quite clear it was a stakeholder insights report. It spoke about how craft inherently already has elements of sustainability, plant-based solutions, circularity. And when global supply chains are looking to procure sustainably and are moving towards responsible production and procurement, crafts are in a way already an answer to it. And the gap, if at all, lies in how we communicate what are you doing and how that is important? What channels are you using to communicate? And are we using the same vocabulary, the global language of sustainability? And can we build that language for India and craft businesses? And we have wonderful speakers with us to talk to us from their learnings. So I would like to ask, and I'll start with you, Apurva. Why is communication and communicating impact so important? How do you make it effective? Do you plan it from a short-term, long-term benefits point of view? And if you could, make it tangible, give us an example of a communication campaign or a communication strategy where you saw those results play out, where you could draw that direct link from this is how I communicated and that's how my business benefited or I benefited in some way. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Shruti. So just to give a quick background, so No Nasties has been around for over 12 years. And over the years, we've evolved and expanded our sustainability initiatives. The first ones to be fair trade. We're also organic. We're also vegan, carbon neutral, carbon negative, tree planting. The list is long, right? And as we've expanded, it's becoming tougher and tougher for us to communicate that to our consumers and our readers and our customers as well, right? So we've had to evolve. Even though we're doing more, we've had to talk less, especially for somebody new coming on board. It's too much to digest, right? And everyone's living in this fast-paced social media world. You're competing with kittens and puppies more than other brands right now, right? So how do you get that people's attention? And to be honest, we've struggled as well. There's so much we want to say, but it's not easy for us to communicate that very quickly, right? So I'll give you an example. So a couple of years ago, we pivoted to be what we call Planet Positive. So we're a carbon negative brand, Planet Positive, where we offset 3 times the carbon footprint of every garment. We plant 3 trees as well. About 3 or 4 years ago, the climate talk wasn't as evolved. We weren't talking about carbon footprints and carbon offsets. It was difficult for us to communicate that, so we had to simplify the message. So I'll give you an example of how we started back then. If you can see my screen. So this was 3 years ago. We launched a website, which we said is Planet Positive. We had to incorporate the plus sign as well as a reminder of what we are and how we are different. But it was too technical. So we did some user studies and we said, people were like, we don't know what this is. I'm going on to something else, right? So we just simplified our message to say, this is 3x better. And our customers trust us because we've had a long history of this. And then we'll break it down into how this is better, right? 100% organic, 300% carbon offset, 3 trees planted. But it needed to be simplified instead of technical, right? In all our user studies, we saw people's eyes just glance over all the details and tech stuff. Now, fast forward to today. This is our current and live website. There's not much mention of sustainability. There's words, but it's mostly product focused because that's what we realize people are reading and wanting. But the data is there further down if you want it, right? We're still data driven and transparent. So now we can talk about how much water we saved, how much CO2 offset, how many trees planted. But it's not become our driving force. So the overall goal is to have people walk away thinking that our brand is sustainable. And then if they want to dig deeper, they can go in deeper. So it's tricky. You're actually not competing against anything but people's attention span. But at the same time, each and every brand, everyone on this call has a sustainability story, has an ethical story. So how do you separate yourself? How do you make your voice heard through all of this? So that's where we are at. It's an evolving process, but it's absolutely important that you do it, right? I think all early stage founders are guilty of selling the product, but you have to sell the story first. So that's where I'm at right now.
And it's interesting because you have showcased the data. You have also used visual vocabulary to communicate what you are trying to say as a brand story, but the focus on story itself and storytelling for climate action has taken the conversations by storm. I think even during COP28, most of the sessions were around how stories can be powerful mediums to communicate messages, because stories belong, every culture has storytelling embedded in them, and stories can be told to people from any age group, so not just your target audience. And stories have the ability to connect with us, and I'll probably forget your data of how much carbon you offset, but I will remember the story you spoke about, or even the words of small business, big impact. Using this content is also very important message on what you're trying to do and the difference that you're trying to create. Moving on to Pragati, the same question for you. And Apurva spoke about how in this day and age when information is so much and we are consuming, it's doomsday scrolling, there's so much happening, there's so much content and clutter. How can you communicate more with less? And how do you move from numbers to stories? And if you have any example of where you shifted gears in the strategy and in storytelling, and you saw tangible results.
Sure. Hi, everyone. See, most of us are operating at the intersection of craft and climate, and communicating the impact that each one of us or all the brands that are creating is very, very critical here, right? And in terms of establishing a relationship with your customers, making a community that believes not only in your products but also in your values, to evoke brand trust and trusting customers. That's a long-term thing, right? When you get you can reap long-term results if you have customers who trust in your story, in what you have to offer, in what your values are, and they are aligned to it, right? So in terms of numbers here, I don't want to talk about sales per se only, but also the value that we are showcasing through numbers itself. Just like Apurva just showed the website, we have few features on the Flourish website. I will just quickly take you all through it. Just give me a second. Please let me know if you can see the screen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So see, every product that is on Flourish has, it's not only about the product or the product description or the measurements, but also each product is connected to the maker and the maker story. And here's the maker story. This is where, when brands talk about, when groups talk about how 100 weavers, they work with 100 weavers, and, the other brand, Prashanti Foundation, that talks about how they work with 25 individuals with special needs. This sort of just adds so much more value to the product offerings that, our group has to offer. So, overall, in terms of the storytelling bit, and I would say that the numbers are also critical in terms of the storytelling. Before I give it an example, here is the carbon neutral pace that's similar to what Apurva, and because we've just started this, and Flourish is not so old, it's not even 3 years old. We are still in the process of adding multiple things that makes our communication clearer and our values that we stand for clearer. One such thing is the carbon neutral checkout that we have to offer. Now, here's why. So this is one part of it. The carbon neutral checkout is largely because the customers are also evolving, right? They are not, it's no more the era of one-way communication where they were only in the listening mode, right? Here, the opportunity that they get in terms of being able to co-create with a brand, and this carbon neutral checkout is one such example, where a customer can neutralize the carbon footprint created by the delivery for their order by just adding a little amount, which is in the total order, it's not a big deal, but it makes the customer also feel that they are a part of the brand journey. And similarly, the option of brand, shopping through values, customers who want to maybe buy from groups who empower women. So that option is also available. And these are mechanisms just to make the audience, make the customers feel that they are a part of the journey, right? They, we are not doing something in isolation, but we are doing it together. And I think communication, that part is also very, very critical. The example that Shruti, that I want to show is, here is this, ad that we were running. And when we initially started, Zaina has beautiful products, and it's a group based in Kashmir, and they had priced at around 8,000, and we were really struggling, and we were not able to sell this. Then we shifted the strategy and added more in the story, and spoke about how the designs are inspired by the local flora of Kashmir, how these are made made in the valley of Kashmir and things like that. And we saw an increase of more than 100% in terms of sales. So, this was one example that we tried. And there are multiple such examples that have sort of given us an idea that the stories really add a lot of value to the offerings that each of our makers have to offer, because there are multiple such groups on Flourish, and highlighting their stories and highlighting their, what their offerings are, or their commitments to planet or social impact are, really helps us in terms of also driving sale, apart from building relationship with customers.
I think it's interesting how you spoke about how a change in strategy actually changed sales. And that can be an important lesson, because that also is a signal of what the consumers are looking for, how people want to engage with a brand. They just don't want to see the product photo, but they may also be interested in the story of the maker, story of how the products were made, where they were made, who made them, what are their lives like. And that helps them kind of emotionally connect to the products. And you also spoke about how values, how storytelling can be used, and values can be used to position a brand and build trust with your customers, or with people who are just following your brand and maybe customers in the future. And it may not lead to an immediate sales, but it leads to brand recall and sales much later, when people are looking for such a product. And always put maker in the forefront. I also wanted to know, when you speak about carbon neutrality and words like carbon emissions, and that can get very jargonish, or it can get very difficult for a person to start to engage with such words. And I think in climate, and now you have regenerative, you have plant-based solutions. So you have all of these technical terms which are coming up globally. So how can people engage with such a word? Do you have any of you, do you have any thoughts on how can we break that down? Or where would you look for your first step? Okay, what word to use, and how can I use it without feeling like greenwashing as well? Because I think today people are, even if they're doing great work, they're scared to communicate that because they don't know if they're using that word correctly or not. So do you have any advice for brands on that?
Shruti, when we initially started...
Pragati, you're on mute.
Am I?
Now you're not.
Now we can hear you.
So when we initially started the Flourish website, we exactly thought what you're thinking right now. So you won't believe, we had a glossary page with these words that we were using in our blogs, and they were hyperlinked. If somebody wanted to read more about it or understand more about it, it used to take them to the glossary page where, that could be clarified. But I do believe that, a lot of the customers, there are so many numbers that we see online where customers are already, one very interesting sentence that I read somewhere was that, in the following years, customers are not only going to worry about value, but also values, which was quite an interesting line and really powerful, right? And that's what that's what we're discussing here. That, and it is going to be the new way of thinking of customers. And already, I think customers are on the path, right? They want to. In fact, initially when we started the cost breakup, we were a little, we were thinking how customers are going to react to it, and We had a couple of conversations to take customer feedback. Some of them were like, okay, why is this commission this much, or why is they had questions. It wasn't like that they were not interested. So I think that more and more, also maybe the other way could be to add some blogs which describes these words, just like the way I showed you the carbon neutral checkout bit. If you click on that, that is going to take you to a page where you can read all about how their order is being carbon neutral, and how it is so critical for the planet and things like that, and how their cooperation is making such a big difference. All of that information is connected to that that order page.
Do you want to chime in, Apurva?
I think it's an ongoing battle. There are a lot of technical terms. There are new ones which will come up all the time. When we were started, we were still battling what is organic, Now it's kind of part of the common lexicon, but even now you won't find somebody who can define exactly what organic is, what is fair trade and climate change. All of it is, you'll always find somebody who's at a different point in the spectrum. And I think it's on us as brands to reduce that confusion and make it as simple as possible, right? I'll give you a couple of examples. So using trusted logos is one way of doing it, right? So if you have the fair trade logo, which is now easily identifiable, especially in the UK or in the West, then the consumer doesn't need to understand all the technical details, but they're like, okay, logo here, I trust it. Yeah. And even simpler and brilliant job done in India with food, right? Veg or non-veg. It's red dot or green dot. It's on every packaging, everything. Now I don't need to work out what the ingredients are and what the details are, because who knows what kind of gelatin they've used and stuff, right? It's not black or white, it's red or green in this case. So in us, we've got to figure it out. How do we break that down, make it that somebody who's running on the internet can also just look at us and trust us, right? It's too much to expect a consumer to know details of all the sustainability initiatives going on, right? What is B Corp? What is SA 8000? What is GOTS flow? It's too much, right? And I know these terms because we're in that industry. I'm sure there are other industries like the food industry, which I don't know about it as well. So while the general population's vocab catches up to the parts where we are talking about, we need to simplify it and just say, okay, trust us. So build trust first and then say, yeah, we know what we're doing. So, but it's difficult. It's very difficult. So
I think this is a difficult piece to also solve for, because certification sometimes can be very difficult for a brand to secure. They can be very expensive as well. But from a brand perspective, I also think that if you see a brand use a word like regenerative, have a look at the word, see what it means. Does it apply to my work? Have a circle. I think Creative Dignity has created such a beautiful space. So maybe you check with them and say, I'm doing this work. Can I call myself plant-based? Can I use this to define my dyes? Can I use this word to define the material that I'm using? Can I say responsible sourcing? So all of those words, because as Pragati said, people are now actively also looking for such words. These are the keywords that they are putting in. So it would be good to expand that vocabulary of your brand language to see if that truly applies to you. It doesn't mean you have to write everything. Maybe it's just one thing your brand identifies and has value aligned with the most, and that's the one you lead with.
yeah.
So coming to the actual communication bit, the first thing is what do I communicate? I have a brand, I have beautiful products. What do I communicate? And how do I communicate that? Apurva, I want to ask you, because any story or any visual or any what about the brand can be treated in multiple formats. It could be a reel, it could be a video, it could be a photograph. It's a visual language, but it's also content, choice of words. So as a person who's just starting out or has very recently started working on different channels, how do I decide what to communicate beyond my product? How do I communicate my story So what are some of the things that you can give some ideas or cues on that people can start to share?
I think everyone here is probably trying their best to be perfect or great in every aspect, right? You want to make sure you're making the most sustainable product, your team treating your team really well, your packaging is good, your website is good, but you cannot talk about all of it, right? It's just too much. You're going to lose people's attention span. Also, that doesn't define your brand. So I would say if you're just starting out, filter it till you get to one message, one single thing that you are great at, and talk about that in every post, every reel, or in your tagline itself. Make that your war cry, right? So if you're into handloom, khadi, yes, you might be working with 300 women, 400 women, but don't put that as your first message at least, right? Start out with one thing. If you're in early stage, only have one level of communication. If you're mid-stage, go 2 levels. If you're an advanced company like Flourish, you have so much to talk about because you're doing so much, then you have to figure out what your hierarchy of communication is. But even then, Flourish is what it's doing. It's just one single message. It's for the makers and crafts folks of India, doing it transparently, right? I hope I didn't get that wrong, Pragati, but that's the key message there, right? So figure it out. I mean, I'm seeing all the introductions here. There's recycled waste, handloom, handcraft, women. If you're writing a paragraph in your introduction, then you've got to nail it down into say one single thing. So start there. That's my advice. Just pick one. So
I think that's a great advice also because people often in business language say, what's your elevator pitch? If you had to define your brand in one line, what words would you choose to define so that the other person understands what you're doing very clearly, but also it's memorable. And what I mean by memorable is not that it's catchy, but to be able to recall and say, oh, I know this brand who is working with upcycled feathers and this person has created this beautiful fabric out of them. Is that story. It's a key messaging. And I know, and I'm talking about a brand which is called Golden Feathers. And I remember him so vividly. It's only when I started engaging with him, I knew that he's working with tribal women. There are so many people he has given, has attached to the brand and has impacted the livelihoods. I knew the story of a lot of people not wanting to touch the chicken feather because it was a byproduct of meat industry, so people did not want to touch it, and how he found the community. So that story is so ingrained in my mind, but I don't remember his impact numbers. But if anyone asks me, is there an alternative material that you have come across, he would probably be one of the top 5 people I would remember. So I love that point on having one key message and say it so often or make it so visible that it becomes part of your brand identity. And similarly over to you, Pragati, there are so many times, like Apurva said, there's data, there's story, there are how many people you are employing, but how do you build that credible voice and an authentic voice that people can identify with?
Just adding to what Apurva was saying about filtering that one sentence that you want to talk about. However, we also have to understand that, we might be talking to multiple stakeholders. One thing that when we started with that line that we used to use for Flourish, we realized that it was more of a, fundraising line, right? Because that's also another set of audience that we have for Flourish and for most of us on this call. So it's important that we align that sentence. Definitely we need to have that sentence, but with the audience, right? And that's how we reworked and found that one sentence that we want to filter for the customers that we want to sell the products to, or talk to the customers in terms of sharing our offerings. So now with that leap, then the distinguishing factor in terms of who you are talking to, apart from what we have to say, is also very, very critical. And in terms of showing our impact, like, Flourish always talks about traceability and transparency. We say that these are our 2 pillars. And it's not just about saying it in the About Us section, but it is about displaying it through the various features on the website, through the different sections that we have on the website, that we do stand by what we are saying. So it's important to not only find that sentence, but also express in your actions, in your, any channel that you are using, to be talking more about that, to be highlighting, and as Apurva was saying, to find opportunities to showcase that wherever you get a chance, to reiterate that one thing that, you have to say, so that there is brand recall and people are able to connect with you long term. So, and also the numbers bit help, like just like the way we saw on the No Nasties website or Flourish website, that carbon neutral, the numbers, the offset, those are numbers that people see, because really nobody has that kind of time to be reading. There are people and who will be interested in reading long copy, but most of them don't have time. So it's critical that you showcase your numbers, the data that you have in a very efficient manner to build that trust with the audience.
So again, I think circling back to less is more. Use numbers to communicate bigger message with lesser words and lesser, because a number has a story to unfold, but also have like different pillars of your brand in visual identity, in non-visual cues, whichever channel you're using, so that it's also a very integrated approach to talk about your brand. And I think one really important factor which I've seen is a call to action. Sometimes just you've told a beautiful story. I, as a consumer, as a person who's engaging with your content, I have read that story. But always it's not a buy now or buy the product. It could be something else, and you can use call to action in really interesting ways. I remember one thing that I used to be very curious, that if someone is putting a product on social media, why aren't they just sharing the price? It's not like they are saying differential prices to different people. And it's much later that I realized that they were using the DM me or a PP, which is price please, to improve the engagement and the reach of their content. So there are very different strategies which people have used to get more eyeballs, to get more visibility, to reach out to different audiences. And you spoke about different stakeholders and audiences and why that's really important, that you are able to connect with. First, you have identified your different stakeholders, but you are also able to communicate with them through a single thread, which you have identified as the what about my brand. And coming to channels, because you spoke about different channels, Apurva, how do you choose channels? There are so many mediums. There are visual mediums. There are different types of audiences, different ways of engaging with audiences on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Facebook, I don't know how, if Facebook is still working. I'm not a Facebook user. TikTok is now banned. But how do you start using newsletters? So there is also a FOMO, like, I'm fear that I'm missing out. Am I using all the platforms correctly? Should I use YouTube or should I use Instagram? Is there any way to identify what platform or what channel would be good for my brand? Is there a science to it? Is it micro experiments, running different, types of experiments to know what is working for me as a brand voice? How would you advise someone who wants to start out or scale up their communications on different channels, and they have to prioritize and choose which one to start with?
Once was another panel about 7-8 years ago, and I famously said that Instagram is not for e-commerce. It'll never be. So look where we are at now. So I missed that boat for sure. I think it's all of the above. I would say, depending on where you're at with your company, find where your audience is. Okay. So the first part, we spoke about what you have to say no matter what, right? To create your story is vital. Now we're talking about where to send it. If your community is small, maybe best to reach out with them to them directly on WhatsApp, right? Where you don't have to spend money on Instagram ads and stuff, because that takes so much money out of your company, right? Build it out on WhatsApp and increase your tribe, right? Or if you already have online customers, you have their email addresses and their SMSs or so, their phone numbers, build it out on email. These are very low cost and interactive channels. Yeah. WhatsApp is easy because almost everybody reads all their WhatsApp messages for now, right? As it becomes more commercial, that will change as well. So that's easy. Email has the best return on investment. It's very easy, practically free to send out emails. You can send reminders, and you're only sending it to people who've given you their email, right? So it's not Facebook or Instagram. They may or may not have followed you, or not ads where you're pushing content. This is people who've already come to you. As you mature, then you can start looking at the other channels, right? YouTube is a great example if you have a strong storytelling medium on video, right? If you are handloom khadi brand, then take all the videos, put them out there, put the right keywords, and see if you can get traffic from that, right? YouTube is owned by Google, so your search engine optimization is almost done there itself. So, but I think everyone wants to go on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or so, because that's where everybody's spending time. But the big guys are all spending money there as well, right? So very difficult to get heard there. So if you're going to focus on one channel, go where it's easiest for you and where you can create your first tribe. As you grow, you'll have to keep adding more and more as well. So yeah, so WhatsApp for me, if I were to start a new brand, I would do WhatsApp, email, and then Instagram at this point. So.
And that's also because I think the algorithm keeps changing. I think I keep hearing everyone say, we're not getting enough engagement with the same kind of content before. So it's also the platforms driving the traffic where, so we have to keep on top of not just trends, but track what's working and what's not working. I'm very curious, there are 32 people here who have, and a lot of you may have businesses. Why don't you also share what platforms you are using to leverage for your brands? And if you have in the past, something has worked, please share. I think this is a learning group for a reason. We are here to learn from each other, and we know what Apurva would use, WhatsApp, newsletter, and Instagram. I'm going to remember that if I start a brand today. Over to you, Pragati, same question, but also I wanted you to talk about how to leverage ads and keywords within your strategy of communication and communicating. So of course, we know what we are communicating. We have some idea of what channels that we can use, but also how to leverage on the tools which are available in the space. So ads, keywords, because content is very important and you have very short space to communicate a message. So how do you go about that?
See, channels, if I have to make a choice, and for all of us, it's very important that we are on the channels that has audiences, which matches our customer persona. Now, we have a segment that we are targeting for our products, right? We want to sell our products to a certain kind of group. So, like, for example, you have a luxury brand, you are in the process of making a luxury brand, and that sells products to HNIs or, with individuals whose household income is around 40 lakhs per annum and things like that. And you don't want to be on a channel like, and when I'm talking about channels, it's beyond social media channels, right, that we just spoke about. It could be other selling channels, right? Platforms like Flipkart. So there is a mismatch, not only in the kind of audience that you want to speak to you for your products and for your brand, but also in the kind of brand you are, right? So the other aspect to, selecting your channels is also the kind of brand, more mature brand that is established, or that who wants to really position themselves as a premium brand. TikTok might not be a good channel for them. I mean, currently it is not there, but just to explain the point. But if you are a more quirky brand and you're more chill, you want to showcase your brand personality is younger, talking to youngsters, TikTok may be one of the good platforms that you can use, right? So it's important to see both the sides, where your audience is, where the kind of people you want to talk to is. Like, for example, for Flourish, when we started off, we wanted to speak to relatively younger audiences, and we started off, and even today, our the community size that we have on Instagram is way bigger than what we have on Facebook. Facebook primarily we use for ads because in terms of giving us the ads, Facebook has been really good for us. But organically, people who really want to engage, this Instagram does much better for us, in comparison to the other channels. Also, the other thing in terms of choosing the channel is the kind of messaging that you want to do, right? So, for example, there are many brands who would use long copy on creatives on Instagram. But Instagram is a visual, is a visual platform. You want to showcase pictures, maybe put some bullet points or some 2-3, some data, which is really minimal, right? We say that there is a 70-30 rule. Your 70% is the visual and 30% is, what copy that you should add. However, there is storytelling that we need to do. So maybe brands should look at making their LinkedIn website stronger, so that there is also a B2B alignment, and also, thought leadership and all of that, because you have to start somewhere. I am totally with Apurva that cost is a very, very big aspect of making a decision in terms of having the platforms, but we could have just an organic presence, not spending on ads but it is important to choose the kind of messaging that you want to do versus the platform. So 3 things, basically. How the brand wants to be seen and the personality of the brand. Second is the kind of audience that you want to speak to. Third, the kind of content that you want to publish. So all these 3 factors are really, really, important when you are taking a call on the channel.
I think that's a very important lesson. Please, Apurva, please add to it.
I'm just seeing Hifsa's comment on it and on the group, and I want to revise my answer for you. I think it's very important to know which channel to use for getting new customers and for building your community, right? So Instagram, Facebook, you need for people who don't know about you, and that's where you need to get acquisition money spent in. But they're not necessarily ideal, especially now with so much traffic and the algorithm changing, to build out the communities. And that's where you can use other lower cost channels, right? But you're not going to be able to send WhatsApp or emails to anybody who doesn't know about you. So
already engaged.
Break that down. Yeah. Where am I getting new customers? Where am I building the community? So split that up.
And those new customers may be offline. Like we said, we are focusing a lot on online channels, but new customers can be offline as well, in exhibitions, in pop-ups. Maybe you've met someone, who is an influencer and has picked up your product and spoken about it at a platform. So there can be multiple ways to get that attention by using also the ad money or the money that you have put aside for promoting your brand very, very wisely. And yes, it's not necessary that you have to use ad money, because there can be organic growth. A lot of brands have built themselves out completely organically as well. I'm curious about the numbers that you track, because we are talking about impact. So how do you define impact, and are there some numbers or some statistics that you look for, quantifiable, or they could be not quantifiable as well, but something that you track on day-to-day basis or a year-end basis? So if you look back, we are in December, so it's one of those reflection moments as well. So if you look back and you say, okay, I've done XYZ well this year, so what would those look like for you? Both of you, so whoever wants to go first.
It's an ongoing question which we've had, and we defined a North Star for No Nasties, which is our key metric which we follow, and ours is the number of trees we plant, right? So we have what we call Mission Million. By the end of the decade, we want to plant 1 million trees, which for us is fairly ambitious. We're at 140,000 trees, close to that today, right? And that's how we align ourselves. And the number of trees we plant is dependent on the number of products we sell and how many trees we plant per product. Right now, it's 3 trees per product. We're hoping to increase that and increase number of products as well. So our entire team conversations can be aligned towards that. And it's also a sustainability goal for us. So that's how we do it internally. Pragati, over to you. How do you guys do it?
Yeah, see, for us, this climate, the carbon neutral bit is one part. We are actually partnering with someone who can support us because we work with a very lean team. However, because we have an aggregator model, I'd say we are still on a journey where we are taking absolute numbers in terms of making sure, finding things like, the ratio, the gender ratio that each of the groups have. Like, we've just recently started this because those are numbers considering that we often talk about women empowerment and we talk about gender and things like that. That's why that number is important for us. Also ensuring an audit format to make sure that there are things that we say, right? There are values that we are aligned. Right now, it's all trust based. When a brand says that or a group says that, yeah, we are offering fair wages, we are working on a mechanism to be able to have an audit and cross check those numbers also, because it's not only about brand flourish and certain numbers that we track. We have so much data that we need to take from, and we need to constantly update, right? Yeah, however, even today there are numbers like how many artisans are you working with, things like that are in terms of the social side we do collect, but it's the process is still growing. We are still building it, but these are the things basically that we want to be able to have: the gender ratio, the kind of wages that all the groups are offering to the artisans, primarily to take care of the social angle. The environmental angle is the carbon neutral thing, where we do count the number of trees that we are planting. Because the carbon neutral for us is not manufacturing, it's only delivery for Flourish.
Understood. So I think that's also to, like you said, it's a journey. So to understand that these things take time to build. So if you have chosen one platform, if you have chosen your what, then continue to reiterate it and take that journey. And I know we would want to have enough time for audience questions. So quickly, as a last word from both of you, on what, as a founder, as a person who's leading these initiatives, what would your top strategy be for anyone who's starting out? And what by that I mean is, how do you keep on top of trends? Do you follow some newsletters? Are there some tools you swear by for creating your content, or getting your inspiration? So like your cheat sheet. We want to know how can, being part of this discussion, we can get an insight into what would you say to get a head start into this communication.
I mean, some of the points are just reiteration of what I've been saying on the call throughout, that you need to choose the channel very smartly, keeping in mind your brand personality and also the customer segment that you're talking to. You need to align the content as per the suitability of the channel, right? Long copy goes on platforms like LinkedIn, visual or video formats goes on YouTube and things like that, right? The other thing, which is a little more technical, but is important, is the inclusion of keywords that are search friendly, right? If you are using that keywords that are search friendly, you have, I mean, the tendency of you finding high intent customers is way more, because when people are searching for the product, they may not necessarily be looking for your brand, but even the kind of product, and if you have been using search friendly keywords, your brand would pop up right at the top or maybe in the first page, which will really be helpful for your brand. The other thing that is important is, don't just focus on words that you should be using. Also focus on words that you shouldn't be using, And, long back when I just joined Flourish, one of my seniors had checked, we had written one blog, and there was this, in one sentence, we said, powered by handlooms. It was a part of the sentence, and he said that you should never use power and handlooms ever in one sentence. Things like that, right? There are multiple words which may not align with your tone of voice or your brand personality. So you should be careful in avoiding such words and maybe make a list of words that you should not be using for your brand. and show impact data. It really helps and being transparent and traceability, and helps customer. It's easier for the customers to trust you. So I think these are pretty much the points that I want to highlight. The tools, Google Analytics is a very good tool for you to keep a track of the kind of customers who are coming, their journey, acquisition, conversion, and all of that. The other very interesting tool, which is also free, is Microsoft Clarity. And that's not so popular, but it is very interesting because it will capture recordings of the entire journey. So suppose if somebody comes to your website, where did they click? How long did they stay? All of that entire journey is recorded, and it can give you a good insight of where people are clicking, what they are reading, where they're spending time on your website. So that's a very interesting tool, I think. So these are the two tools that I think are very important for everyone to use. Apurva, over to you.
I didn't know about Microsoft Clarity. Now it's going to be on my tool kit. Thank you for that. Everything you said, and I'll just give a different answer as well to help it out. So I think all of us are making products, and we have a production plan for what kind of products we make, right? If you're making saris, kurtas, shoes, and you keep planning and you review it to see what to make more of, right? If kurtas are selling more, you're going to make more kurtas. The same thing needs to be done with your content and your marketing. So I would suggest putting a monthly content plan together and break it down into how many of those messages are around your impact, around your founder story, around your employees, around the environmental impact, whatever your stories are, give a percentage to it, right? So maybe you want to do, as an early brand, you want to say 80% around my backstory and 20% on my products. Put that content out there and review it and see which one is getting traction with your audience, and then tweak it for the next month, right? You're putting this effort to get the message across, then you have to review it, right? So you can look at Instagram analytics. If they're coming to your website, definitely look at Google Analytics to see where they're going, how much time they're spending on pages. But at least your marketing team, your social media team should know what they're writing and why they're writing it. So internally, we use a tool called later.com to plan our social media calendar. You could do it in a spreadsheet as well. It's a simple monthly calendar. But once it's scheduled, then we can go and tweak things as well very quickly. It's something we don't want to keep doing at the last minute. So everything is scheduled and pre-planned, except my Founder Friday post, which I write Friday morning, every morning, but I take that leeway. But the rest of the team works on that calendar basis, So simple tools, I'm going to look at Clarity, but just make it easy for yourself to plan and also review.
And I think it helps to plan so that you're not every day thinking about communication, because communication is a part of building your brand, but it should not. How much time do you spend? I'm actually curious now again. How much time do you spend or your team spends on planning and doing content? And I don't want to be greedy asking all the questions, so we will open it up to the audience as well. But just tell me in terms of percentage, if you had to give like a rough percentage of how much time do you spend on communications, that would be a great.
How much we spend or how much we should be spending?
How much time do you spend right now?
I think if I'm being honest, in our overall team effort, we're not even 20-25% on communication. We haven't had the bandwidth to, and we're trying to fix some other things behind the scenes. So we have a couple of people who work on content, and that's what's done. It's now nowhere as planned as it should be. What I would like to do is have 80% on marketing and sales as a founder and 20% on product, right? 20% of what you can control, focus on what you can't control to actually get your product out there. So.
And for you, Pragati?
I think currently we are using about 25% for communication. And as Apurva was saying, we do the calendar in the previous month. So the January calendar will be worked on this month to make sure what is it that we are talking about, because it's also important. One point that maybe we did not touch upon is to have some sort of sync in terms of what you're talking about in the multiple channels, that the formats could be different, and but the essence has to have some similarity. However, I do agree with Apurva. I think even we need to spend more time. There are various other channels, right? Which are more organic, maybe writing blogs that you should be writing on a Quora, for example. Those are also things that are also very low cost and very, very critical for brands. And in the list of all the channels that Apurva highlighted, I think, writing blogs on Quora and responding as the brand and sometimes as a neutral person is also really, really helpful for brands like us.
Thank you. Thanks, Apurva and Pragati. And we'll open it up to questions. I think we already have a few questions. Meera, would you like to ask the question to set context for everyone else who's listening?
Sorry, you're asking me to ask a question, or you're asking me to invite people to ask questions?
To write to the question that you asked, because you said in communication.
Right. Yeah. So I'm saying how I was just curious to know that, when you're communicating about all that you do, how easy would you also simultaneously try to make it for a customer, like almost like an invitation to come and see the brand that you're talking about, and actually very actively invite people, so that people know that, okay, this possibility exists, that if I'm going to be in Bombay and Apurva is in Bombay, then I could drop in and see, the brand that I'd like to be loyal to.
I would love that. That's a great idea. We haven't done that in a while. We used to have open lunches and stuff when we were much smaller and when we thought we had more time. It's difficult to do it practically, to say anytime, anyone. But I remember like in the UK, the Common Objective, the Ethical Fashion Forum, they had a Friday lunch for anyone. Right?
Yeah.
I think that would be a brilliant idea if we feel like there is traction to do it. So I would love to have it open and be inviting. We just have to work out the practical part of it. But again, it might be different that might be your USP. That might be your entire communication as a craftsman.
Yeah.
Right? So have visiting hours.
Yeah.
Have a showcase hour.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Because I've seen that's what has worked for some of the artisans I've worked with.
Yeah.
Just having an open house that you can just walk in anytime, you can interact, you build a relationship, and then after that it's like word of mouth. It just sort of spreads.
That's a great idea. And I think, Apurva, if you do start, with your
we'll all be there.
Friday, an open lunch to discuss that thought. I think it would be wonderful. And we do something, we encourage people to open up their studios at Fashion Revolution. It's called Fashion Open Studio. So
Wow.
it is also a way for people to experience. We can keep talking about sustainability and how the garments are produced and who makes them, but nothing takes away from an experiential journey where you go into a studio and you actually interact directly, and that kind of confirms the story. And that's a story they would be telling for your brand instead of you telling that story.
I think even if they don't come to you, even if they don't come, just knowing that you are offering this and that you are open to showing your brand just will instill confidence,
I love it, Meera. Thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely going to see that from us soon. So.
Yeah, and Pragati, I'll give you some other ideas later.
Yeah. We don't have anything, Meera, but this whole offline experience that sometimes we offer, because we are largely an online platform. That gives us a lot of experience. And when people come and they say that, I also shop from your website and the product is so good, and like listening from the customer directly, obviously is really, really exciting. We don't have anything of this sort. And also maybe it's not possible for everyone on the call also to do something like that very often. One thing that I've noticed with a lot of brands, that they do this meet the team section where there are some quirky videos or something which is more personal and not only like so and so CEO or so and so graphic designer or whatever, but it's about their personal aspect, which is also an interesting take on just getting to know the team behind a brand. So that's something that that is easily doable till we make the big plan of
Like I know, for example, at Itokri, Nitin and Jia, his wife, they still, despite now the scale that they have reached, every product is accompanied by a handwritten note that they write themselves. I don't know how they manage it, but they somehow do it. So anyway.
And I think that is communication. We spoke a lot about the channels, we spoke about do's and don'ts and things like that, but I think that like in communication in general, you have verbal communication and then you have non-verbal communication. Similarly for brands, it's your packaging speaks on your behalf, right? That note that you might be putting on with the product speaks on your behalf. And there are multiple other things that a brand is doing, maybe not thinking that somebody is reading something from the actions that you are taking, but there is more and beyond than just spinning of words that we largely spoke about today.
Thanks.
That's such an important learning. And Suruchi, over to you. I think you have a question around LinkedIn.
Yeah, but do you want to take Kanika's question first? Because that's related to packaging, so just the thread continues.
I missed that. Kanika, would you like to ask your question?
Hi. Yeah, sure. I actually was wondering if you had any information or data around, extending a brand story when you are sending packaging to a customer, because with e-commerce and especially D2C, a lot of the time that is their first touch point with your brand. So how do you extend that storytelling, or do you have any interesting insights on leveraging that? And also, a lot of brands send a lot of information when you open up a box, right? So do we know that people are reading that? Like how much should a brand put into that? Or is it just something that gets thrown away? Or do you feel like that's an opportunity as well to sort of make some kind of impact?
Before they answer, Kanika, as a consumer, I can tell you I read all the notes that come and I read them. I actually keep them as well. And it's not because I work in fashion and in sustainability, but because I think it's a gesture. There are times you get handwritten, but there are just sometimes they would talk about their maker and their artisan and there would be a photo. So I do have a wall with all of that and I will share that with you, Suruchi, and Creative Dignity team. But yes, it matters. And I would let the brands answer this question.
Kanika, I think it's invaluable, right? You're right. It's the first tangible touch point. It could be a repeat buyer and they're trying to see how the brand evolves as well. We try and reinforce whatever the message is from the No Nasties brand when you get the product. So for us, it's a fine balance, right? So we want to reduce carbon footprint. That's our overall goal. Now, every packaging insert adds a little bit of carbon footprint, right? The entire packaging itself is a carbon footprint. So we've done a lot of R&D projects. 12 years, we've never sent anything in plastic. It's always been fully compostable. Last year, we even worked on returnable packaging to reduce the footprint, and we're going to do that again next year. Unfortunately, the company we were working with shut down, but to me, that would be fantastic, right? So that's one touch point. Like, what does the packaging reflect? What are core messages of the brand? In terms of an insert, what we did was we wanted to show you the impact of your purchase, right? No Nasties, your purchase is planet positive. Here's your carbon footprint. Here's your carbon offset 3 times. So we would write that as well, right? If you buy 2 products, we're also planting 6 trees. So we would handwrite that, but in a postcard as well, to kind of reinforce what we've got going there as well. So use that as an opportunity where you have undivided attention from your customer. They're not competing with kittens and puppies at that point, unless they have their own at home. But they're opening the box excitedly, wanting to consume everything you're saying. So.
And also do everything you're saying, because the compostable packaging which you're talking about, actually I've planted that in my garden just to see if it composts if it disintegrates, and it says the amount of time it will take. So I am, as a customer, I am tracking it and I am curious. So it's an action that is done from me when I have that package in my hand, versus if I had read that on Instagram or on LinkedIn, I might not have been that engaged with that concept. So this channel definitely works. Pragati, do you want to add to that?
I think as a customer, for me as well, I think it has a lot of value. And one thing that we are working on currently, because I agree with Apurva that printed thing does connect to your carbon footprint. However, we are working on something which is on seed paper that can be planted, after reading, and there's this, a small note which is about, like a long-term relationship with the customer, because there is a seed that paper can be planted and things like that. So that's one way, but net, I feel that it does make make you feel good when you get a note like that. Now, I started shopping on a brand called long back. My daughter was young, and there are Amazons and Mintras of the world. I was not so connected with the sustainable feel as much as you guys have been since the beginning. And there's this brand called Hopscotch, which is only for kids, right? And you get all those stuff also on Amazon and Myntra, but they're this whole packaging in the note that they will, I think that's because I really connected with the brand, and I always used to then shop for her from Hopscotch. I do feel that it makes a lot of difference if you have a personalized note.
So that's another strategy that we didn't discuss but came out during the questions. Does anyone else have any questions? We'll take final questions now. We can, I think, take two more questions. One of them, I think, Shruti, do you want to ask about LinkedIn?
Yeah, so because I'm a little active on LinkedIn, and I definitely, so when we were talking about building communities, and this is not particularly for sales and reaching the like-minded people. So LinkedIn is a viable channel in terms of, you get that receptivity from the community, and they recognize the work that you're doing, because that sensitivity and the sensibility is already present in the community that you build there. And, just an example of a brand being Me Meraki. And a lot of work that they do gets documented. There are many, of course. Do you see value in that kind of a long-term strategy? Because this is more knowledge building, but communicating impact gradually.
I mean, I do feel that it makes a lot of difference, right? Because brand stories, and as I said, that there is one conversation when you are talking to the customers, the channel where you are talking to not only customers to sell is not the objective to be on LinkedIn, right? That's why the agenda to be on that platform is very different from what you're doing on a Facebook and Instagram, right? You're showcasing your products, they're looking all pretty, you put some numbers because you want people to, romance the product and buy the product ultimately. However, what LinkedIn can do for you is way more long-term. It can build a relationship, it can help the brand build thought leadership, and maybe there are various groups on LinkedIn that you can be a part of, right? There are sustainable groups that are related to sustainability, climate conversation, and all of that. You can be a part of those communities and connect with like-minded people. So that is definitely very, very helpful and important for a brand to do, in my opinion.
I think it's also, like you said, the purpose. I found LinkedIn to be very powerful when it means connecting for B2B, for partnerships, for collaborations, for learning more about the field you are in. So the amount of learning that I have from LinkedIn on sustainability, what other brands are doing, is incredible as compared to other platforms. And really, it helps you connect with the right people. So I think that's how I personally use LinkedIn for Fashion Revolution as well as for other endeavors.
Yeah.
I'll give the opposite perspective from what I don't do, right? So I think they're all invaluable, right? But we're not on LinkedIn. I'm not on Quora. I'm not blogging. I'm not on Twitter. Not because they're not effective, not on Pinterest, not on YouTube actively, just because we can't, right? We're a small business. I'm the catch-all for every department. Unless we have a marketing team which is assigned to that, we struggle to do even what we do currently. So maybe be true to what you can do, right? Your business is as sustainable as you are. So see if it's possible, not possible, but be okay with letting it go. I know LinkedIn, not going on LinkedIn and not going on Twitter was a very conscious decision for us, saying we cannot do a good job there, so we won't do that. We'll focus on our channel, which we can be more visual and more storytelling as well. So it's okay that FOMO will be there, but let it be. Just do what's best for your time as well.
So choose your platform. What works for another brand may not be the right platform for you. And it's through micro experimenting, but also what you're most comfortable with and where your audience is, as Pragati said. So if you are able to have those research points, then that would be a good place to start. I think last question for the day is by Isha. It is for Apurva. She's asking, what is the mortality rate in saplings you plant, and do you replace them when you lose them? So that's a question on the extension of your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big factor for us, right? To see where our money is going and who's taking care of it. We have planted trees with different organizations around the world, from India to Brazil, and now mostly focusing on mangroves in Mozambique and Madagascar, working with one of the largest tree planting organizations called Eden Reforestation. But all of these organizations, the same question is asked, right? Every company which is putting that money is like, are you doing the right thing? Are you planting the right trees? Are you employing the right people? What's the long-term benefits of it? In general, each organization will monitor it for a year if they're planting long-term, longer duration trees. Like in the Indian organization, we work with Grow Trees. They said they would monitor and replant within a year, because that tree takes 20 years to grow, right? One of the reasons we switched over to mangroves is much faster and can be done at scale as well, right? And they reproduce in within 3, 4, 5 years as well, and they sequester 3 times the carbon footprint as well. So that they don't monitor each sapling, but they work at a larger scale. They're planting almost 1 million trees every so often as well, right? And then we get the added benefit of annual reports and monitoring and satellite photos along with that as well. So it's the right question. It's just what are you looking at? At this point, we're looking at scale to get to 1 million. So
I think that's interesting to choose the organizations also that you work with, and they also have a way to communicate with you through visual cues like the photographs, etc. But also they must be giving periodic reports as well. I think we can wrap this up. Suruchi, Meera, if that's, I think we've covered most of the questions. If there are any more questions, please feel free to reach out to the Creative Dignity group. And I saw the link to the WhatsApp channel as well. So if you're not part of that, please join that group. They have done incredible work since COVID and has been a very powerful movement for craft communities. So thank you for the wonderful work that you've done, and thank you for having such an important discussion. Everyone talks about communication, but to be able to tangibly understand and have people who've done it share those thoughts with us. Thank you for putting it together. And Apurva and Pragati, thank you for sharing honest, candid gems of knowledge which people can take away and start their journeys with.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shruti, Apurva, and Pragati. I'm so glad this happened. And, the structure that we've taken, I'm sure it'll be very beneficial to, the participants who've attended. Just 2 gems that I've really captured. One from Apurva being that your brand is as sustainable as you are. And Pragati, you telling us that consumers will place value on values. Over to you, Meera.
Yeah.
I think have a good evening and a good dinner, and thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to seeing you on the Creative Dignity WhatsApp and interacting with us more. Thank you very much for your time. Apurva, Pragati, Shruti, and thank you, Suruchi, thank you, Bhakti, for putting this together, as always. Thank you.